Hello, everyone. We'll get started here in a couple minutes. If you want to chime in and say hello and say where you're from, and like I said, we'll get started here in a couple minutes. Turn off my delay. Canada, North Carolina, cool. Welcome. We shall start in about a minute, all right? So how's everybody holding up with the quarantines? Some of us are, some states are, some states aren't. Jersey, welcome. Okay, I encourage you to make comments along the way. Today is, so officially, let's get started with welcome to Bookkeeping Life. And what I wanted to do with this setup is basically walk you through everything you need to know from to start and grow your own bookkeeping business. I have programs out there, but I thought this would be a good time to do a daily live session. Hopefully that there won't be any problems with me doing that every day, where I actually walk you through each of the steps and we talk in depth about different things. And you can ask questions along the way, and I encourage you to do that. And so that we will cover a lot of different things. And I expect this to probably last at least a week, maybe 10 days. There are a lot of topics that we can discuss every day in detail. So, and they will be saved. So they will be on YouTube, and you'll have the link. The link won't change to them. So if you have this link now, you'll have it next week, and you can always check back and review it and watch it as many times as you want. So for those of you that don't know who I am, I started Bookkeeping Life 2 years ago, and it's been a really wonderful thing. I've been doing bookkeeping and taxes for the last 20 years, and for 17 of those, I've been working for myself. So I am coming with a lot of great experience that I can share with you, and that's my goal. So for the first 3 years of that 20 years that I've been doing this, I was a staff accountant in Illinois, and then I realized I didn't want to do that after, I knew that right away, but after 3 years I had had enough, and I moved out to California. I've been out in California here since 2004. And ever since coming out here, I've been on my own, doing my own thing, built my practice from scratch. Back then, we didn't have the many different ways to find clients that we do now. So I think it's actually easier to build a practice now than it was back then. So let me share everything that I have with you, and hopefully you can gain a lot from it and build your own successful bookkeeping business. And I always say, if I did it, you can do it. And we'll get into all that at another time. So who this course, or this series, I guess we can call this a series of videos, is for. It's really for anybody that's thinking about getting into bookkeeping and having their own bookkeeping practice. You do not have to have a degree in accounting. You do not have to have a college degree at all to start and run a successful bookkeeping business. It is really, so I always say there's two parts to a bookkeeping business. There's the science part of it, and there's the art part of it. And really briefly, the science part of it is knowing the software, knowing how to do bookkeeping, that kind of thing. And the art of it is everything else. It's the branding, the advertising, talking to clients, getting clients, sealing the deal, finding out what a client situation is, and carrying it forward from there. and then actually using the software and the science part of it, the math, to execute the whole thing. But there's a lot of art to it, so that's really important to understand. And you don't have to be a brainiac to do this stuff. The software makes our lives really easy. You do have to have attention to detail and care. You have to have a lot of care. You like to do things correctly. So, because every penny has to be accounted for when you do bookkeeping. So, attention to detail and effort and care, you can do well in this business. So that's kind of who this is for, and the prerequisites of doing it. You don't have to have any accounting knowledge or background or bookkeeping for that matter, because we do have courses that teach you QuickBooks, and there's ways to learn bookkeeping. And I always preach that if you start slow, and pick the right clients in the beginning, you don't have to get yourself in over your head like I did many times starting out. So, but with the proper, being choosy about your first clients, you can start off in a way that you're learning as you go, and we'll get into all of that. So now what I want to do is lay out the days to come. So this is day one, and it's really just where we're going to lay out the blueprint of what we're going to do in the days to come, and so that you know what's coming down the pipe. And then and there is quite a bit, so that's the good thing. If we're all kind of in lockdown in a certain way, take an hour every day to learn this, and after this is all said and done, you'll have learned a lot, and you might be well on your way to running a successful bookkeeping business. So it's not only just getting the bookkeeping business up and running, but it's also gaining clients and growing it along the way. So if you've already started a bookkeeping business, this is still for you. It's because we're going to go into the details of how to grow it. So let's get busy. So I'm just going to kind of run down the different topics that we're going to cover in the next days/weeks. We'll see how it goes. I don't know exactly how many days it's going to take, but that's kind of the point of today, is kind of laying it all out. What are the topics we're going to discuss, and then I'll be able to break it into different days and how much we should cover and the order of which we should cover. In general, we're going to cover branding, advertising, client interactions, how to talk to potential clients, getting that client, determining where to start with that client, getting the information from the client, and then moving forward with the job. And then also the QuickBooks experience. The QuickBooks experience, we won't get into actual QuickBooks, how to do QuickBooks. We do have courses on that, which I'll share with you, but we won't, because that's such a big topic. I won't get into the actual QuickBooks software, but in general, to run a successful bookkeeping business and to get a bookkeeping business up and running, you need really good branding. If you know me, you've heard this 1,000 times. Really good branding plus really good advertising equals clients. But I've modified it a bit because you do need to learn some QuickBooks as well. So it's really good branding plus really good advertising. You can't advertise well if you have crappy branding. I see a lot of people doing their own logos. Some are good, some are not. If they're not good, you can't do really good advertising. So it's a flow that has to happen where you have really good branding first, so you can do really good, really effective advertising. And then with that effective advertising, you're going to be talking to potential clients. So you need to know how to talk to potential clients. And then you get into knowing the QuickBooks software and that, and we'll talk about the level that you need to know to start off, but and it's very low actually, because like I said, if you pick your clients wisely in the beginning, and we'll talk about what kind of clients those are, you do not have to know QuickBooks like the back of your hand. You need to know the basics of QuickBooks to get in there and do the basic what we call level 1 bookkeeping, and that's where I recommend everybody start. And that is the very basic bookkeeping of taking people's transactions that they've made, transactions that hit their bank and credit card statements, and putting them into QuickBooks and reconciling. So let's get into all of the topics that we're going to discuss in the following days, and then try to map out on what days or how long this is going to run, and so that you can plan as well. All right, so with branding in mind, so you might want to take notes on this as far as what topics are going to be discussed, and I'll be sending out emails and Facebook posts as far as what's coming in the following days, so you kind of always know what's coming ahead. But you may want to take notes on this right now. So the first thing is naming your business. If you don't have a business yet, you're gonna need to come up with a business name, and I go into all the details about what I believe is a good business name, and a business name is actually really important. And then how to get that domain name, and what is a domain name, what is hosting, because you're going to need a website. And then we talk about logo, what makes a good logo, and how to get a logo. We have in-house logo designer that of the hundreds of people that have gotten a logo through us, they're all very pleased. We have an excellent logo designer. And then we go into the simple yet effective website. You don't have to have a big elaborate website with many pages anymore, or if you ever did, I'm not sure. But I think that was the old way of doing things. But you really just need a good website, a one-page website, and I talk about that in detail. And then how to get that domain name and the hosting and what those things are. So that's a lot of the branding, but also comes with branding is little things like whether you should get a Facebook page, what type of business entity you should be, if you should incorporate. A lot of people talk about LLCs, which do not rush out and get an LLC until you hear that class. If you should be a sole proprietor, all of those different things. And about how you're going to be talking to potential customers, ideally, right? So how you're going to be presenting yourself, your name, your email address, whether you should get a separate phone number. We go into all of that, and how your email should look, your signature at the bottom of an email. All those things are really important. So that's kind of the branding piece of things. I'm gonna read the comments so far. Cool. So we'll get into the Facebook ads question, Melissa, but that's good, and we will cover it. So then there's the advertising side of things. So we'll have moved past the branding piece of things, and then get into how to advertise, how to take that really good branding that you've gotten and turn it into really good advertising. And advertising doesn't have to cost a lot of money. In fact, it can cost little to no money, and that surprises a lot of people. And I've made mistakes along the way that I'll let you know about, that cost me money and that turned out to be a waste of money. So that you don't make those same mistakes. But I've figured out ways to get your name out there without spending a lot of money and really spending next to zero money. And then all the different ways that you can get your name out there. So there's quite a few different ways, and I won't go into them in detail now, but there's like social media, there's Craigslist, there's Yelp, there's you can get involved in networking groups, and really just developing hobbies and developing a lifestyle that is so different than maybe the one you had before of working a 9-to-5 job. Being a sole proprietor it's unbelievable, because you set the rules. It all lies on you, and that's part of maybe the stress that some people don't want to handle. but times like these are excellent example of how if you're calling the shots, you're potentially in a better situation, and also the line of business that you're in is really crucial, and what everybody's going through right now is another thing. I've had a lot of emails saying, what how does the current situation, is it affecting my clients or my client base, I should say, and my level of work, and there's that old saying that there's only two guarantees in life, which is death and taxes, and that's true in a lot of ways. And the thing about taxes is the tax piece of that saying is for businesses to be able to do taxes. They did push some dates back, but it's all going to have to be done. So for businesses to be able to do taxes, what do they need? Bookkeeping. So bookkeeping is a really solid business that can be done from your own home. I do it from my own home, and so it's a business that people have to do one way or the other. They can push back a little bit. They can push back even a couple of years, and then you've got a big catch up and clean up, maybe clean up job to do. But so, anyways, getting back to the advertising, those are the kind of the advertising topics that we'll discuss, and we'll do that in detail, and that may take a day or two, I presume. Okay, then we'll talk about, because this is all about doing all this from a home office. I'll go over what is really needed for a home office, what I use, and it's very little. Basically, if you have a computer and internet, you're good to go. But there's a couple other things that you might want to do, and also the benefits of doing all of this from home, which some are quite obvious. All right, then we go into this whole series of talking. So that's the branding and the advertising. Then there's the client piece. There's a lot there. So we will spend days on how to talk to potential client. That potential client call comes in or an email. How do you handle it? And I might get really crafty and show some examples of how I would do an actual call, and maybe quite a few different calls examples of how I would respond to that. And that's something that you just get more comfortable with the more you do it. Now I don't even blink an eye when a client calls, or potential client calls. And the list of things that you will get that way too with just practice. But I do remember very well in the beginning being nervous, and I would always have to be in a certain mindset and to be able to handle those. But I can handle them in my sleep now. So I'll give you tips and tricks on how to get your mind there, and also it's knowing what you really need to get from that client. It's really important. So if you know all those things and know how to get your mind in the right mindset, it's actually pretty easy. So we'll talk about the whole client piece, and that goes deep, and not only after you get the client, or after you speak to the client the first time, you might speak to them again. You have to seal the deal. You have to get the information that you need from the client. How do you do that, and what is that information? And how do you start on their books? And there's quite a few different situations that the client's books could be in, to change the path that you go. And there's all kinds of different people out there. So the type of person that you're speaking to, some of them are knowledgeable what they have, and some are not. Some think they know what they have and they don't. And then there's those that really know what they're doing, they just don't want to do it. So there's all kinds of different scenarios, and we'll go in depth on all of that. So that's the big client piece. That'll take a few days, I'm sure. Then there's a whole bunch of little things that we can talk about that are actually added up quite big, because they really complete the puzzle of how to do this well, do it effectively, efficiently, Um, so we talk about how to get paid, your pricing, um, how my fill the plate strategy, and that's uh, it's a lot of you are going from one job. You may have a job, um, or you may have lost your job during this time, or maybe without a job. So it's kind of, it varies, but we'll talk about how to, if you are would like to transition from your current job or your current situation and build this practice up, how to do that. Um, and what is, because you can build it up on the side, and it gets to a tipping point where you can, okay, drop the job you hate and then do this full time. And it's not all, only you got to cut everything off and do this. You don't have to do that at all. You can build this up with one client at a time, do it on at night or on the weekend or whenever you have free time, build up your client base, and then reach that tipping point where you can drop your old job or the thing that you hate doing and do this full time. So we'll talk about all that in detail. A lot of mindset stuff, like what is it that what motivates you, and the kind of mindset you need to have in order to be successful at this. If you've been a 9 to 5er your whole life, this all is very different than that type of job where you um, I know lots of 9 to 5ers. And there are a variety of those. So some of them have to take their work home with them, and some of them just literally punch a clock. When they're not working that 9 to 5 job, they are able to completely check out of that job. This is not when you have your own business, you never fully check out. So even if I go on vacation for a week, I am not checked out. I stay on top of my emails, and but then that sounds like it may be a bad thing, but it's actually not. It's you're doing things on your own terms. You're going on vacation whenever you want, or maybe not whenever you want, but on your own terms, and not when a company says you can. And also, there's so many benefits to this. You can all the freedoms that you get with being able to be there for your kids, and there is no cap to your income. So you may be working a job where if you stay at that job, you'll never, ever, ever get to making, say, double what you're making now. Well, this type of job, this profession, you're limited by your own self. There are new businesses popping up all the time, and you're only limited by how much you want to grow that business and how much effort and determination you put into growing the business. You could literally, whatever you're making now, you can probably make double it. Okay, like you don't have that limit in your mindset, and whether you even think about it or not, you're potentially just limited so mentally, knowing that you're in this job and you're never ever going to get past a certain point. Well, when you have your own business, so many things are limitless. It really depends on you. It doesn't depend on your boss or whatever type of job you're doing. And then you also learn so much about all kinds of businesses. Maybe you get really good at this, and then you decide you want to do a different type of business. So I do see your questions and comments coming in, and I will definitely address those. So thanks, and keep them coming. Okay, we'll do the Q&A thing after I get through the list. So we talked about the initial contact with potential clients, and like I said, when I get done with this, I will put together an outline of kind of the flow that we will go over these each and what days we'll go over them, and it'll change a little bit over time, I'm sure, but I'll at least be able to give you a rough draft of what's to come in the following days. I just wanted to present to you today the topics that we'll be covering, and we'll get into each one in depth. Okay. I've talked about what the starting point, what you would need from the client, We'll talk about how to bill, how to price your services, hourly versus flat rate. A lot of people ask how much they should charge, and I'll get into an answer to that. Um, Gathering client information, I've talked about that, and we'll do that. Screening clients, really important, especially when you're starting out. I'll go into that in detail. How to be efficient, educate yourself along the way. If you ever had to fire a difficult client, how to do that. Maybe you won't have to worry about that for a little while, but and then we can go over all the so part of the home office will go over what tools you'll need. So not just what kind of hardware you're going to need, but what software you're going to need and that kind of thing. And then we'll go over things like some of these are topics that have videos on out there, but we'll go into them more deeply, and they'll be updated, based upon my current feelings on those and what I've experienced lately and feedback that I've gotten from you good people. Then we'll talk about the whole introvert versus extrovert and how this line of business is actually beneficial to introverts. And I am an introvert, mostly. So pricing, we'll talk about just-in-time learning. So that's really important, and it's been a very popular topic. Just-in-time learning, really quickly, but we'll get into it in depth, is that you don't have to know everything to start. And I know people like that. They want to know every single thing about something before they even get into it, and you can't know everything about this before you get into it. If you have that mindset, you'll never do it. So just-in-time learning is really effective, and it's a good way to get going on something, and then you learn what you need to learn along the way. But I'll get into that. And then a lot of people have that fear of failing. We'll talk about that, and also the imposter syndrome, which is very, very common, and I still have myself. So the imposter syndrome. We always there's a little thing in our brain that always lets us worry about things. So some of us worry more than others, but there are things that we should worry about and things we don't really need to worry about. And imposter syndrome is, we can get into in depth in that. So that is basically the rundown of all the topics. So if you list those out, and we did one a day, we're talking about a couple weeks worth of stuff, but I'll probably group some of them into one day. So just looking at it, I'm thinking we might have 10 to 14 days worth of stuff here too. So we will not be bored over the coming days, and I really appreciate all of you. And this doesn't cost anything. I'm trying to make this available to everybody. I do have a donate thing. If you want to donate, it's great. If times are tough for you, I totally get it. Don't worry about it. But in the description, there's a PayPal thing if you want to donate. And then you can also do what's called, in the chat thing at the bottom, you see a little $sign that you can support this situation. And then it helps motivate me to do a lot more of this stuff and get more creative in doing it. But like I said, not mandatory, and I understand that these times really are difficult for some people, and then it doesn't affect others as much. But and I do hope everybody's doing okay. Okay, so let's start going through some questions, and now is a good time to start throwing them up if you haven't. So from the top, Melissa said, do you need to run Facebook ads? We will definitely get into this in more detail, but the shorter answer is no. And you can try it, but it costs money, and there's ways to do advertising for your business that does not cost money. So I do not recommend jumping right into Facebook ads unless it's just unless you really like analyzing data and or you have somebody that can do the ads for you, um, because it's very intricate really. You can't just throw up an ad and expect it to work. There's a lot of trial and error behind it. Every little thing, it's really interesting. Every little thing makes a difference. If the color of your ad is uh, yellow versus green, and this kind of font versus that kind of font, the image that you have on it, what the text that you have on it, the demographics obviously that you're sending it to. So there is a lot of trial and error that should be done when you run Facebook ads. And it's not just you throw up one ad and you expect it to work. You really, when you do Facebook ads, you really want to start with 30 or more ads, and you run them all, and then you see over time you got to spend money over time which ones work and that kind of thing. So it's analyzing all that data and also putting money into it to see how it works. So it's not a quick thing, that Facebook. So Naz says, I figured it's easiest to just use my own name rather than a business name, and that is quite all right. Yeah, done. Branding done really well. You can really use any name you want. Not anything, but you know what I mean. Because you really just have to look really professional. There's benefits to using different words in the name, like the town that you live in, or the word bookkeeping and stuff like that. We'll get into all of that in detail, but it's quite all right to use your name. So Aaron asks a realistic number of clients you can manage by yourself. Another question that doesn't have an easy answer because it depends on the size of the client. So you can have a client that requires a lot of time from you, or you can have, say, 6 clients that require a lot of time from you, and that's all you're going to be able to do. But if you price those right, then that's all you're going to need as well. Um, or they might be on the other end of the spectrum is really small clients, and then you're going to need a lot of them. Um, so it depends. The formula of that is number of clients times how much you're charging those clients equals how much you get, and is that enough? But it's good to have a variety of clients. I personally like to have a couple big ones and then lots of small ones, because the small ones, if you lose one of them or a few of them, and in times like this, that can be possible, where they just put everything on hold for a while. Uh, you don't feel, if it's a $100 $200 a month client, you're not going to feel that financially if you have a lot of them. So, but if you have 2 clients and you're making 2,000 a piece on those, and then we get into a national crisis and they both decide to halt things for a while, then you're out, all of your money. So there's different thoughts on that we can get into in more detail. Yep, Naz, we'll get into the software needed. Obviously, I'm a big fan of QuickBooks, and we will talk about anything else that you might need. Yep, India, if I'm saying that right. That's a good question. How do you, if you don't have any experience, how do you make them feel? You know, how can I make them feel trustworthy of me without any experience? Yep, we will get into all of that. Okay, that's a good question. Yep, introverted is not a bad thing. I always thought it was, but it's not. and really, if you haven't seen my video on that, that's it's such an interesting thing. I love it because it talks about how the chemicals in our brain reward us and reward people differently for by what's going on and what they're doing. So an extrovert really gets a lot of chemical reward in their brain by getting out in groups, chit chatting, small talk, all that stuff. They get a constant drip of energy from their brain, and introverts get that type of energy drip uh, by being in smaller groups or alone and doing things uh, that are in quieter spaces, and one of the I'll talk more in depth about this, but one of the benefits that we get is that we are able to sit down and work on things for a long period of time. We can just keep our head down and work on things for several hours at a time and actually feel rewarded for doing that, where somebody with major extrovert leaning personality traits wouldn't be able to do that. But we'll get into that in depth. Hello, thank you. Sounds good. Thanks a lot. If you work Naz says, if we work full time and doing this part time, should you disclose that fact to your clients that you do this? I don't find that clients ask that, and why would they care? So they're looking for somebody to solve a problem for them. They are looking for a bookkeeper to handle their books. They don't care if you've got 5 other things going on if you do a good job. So if you know what you're talking about and doing, which you gain over time, and you do a good job, that's all they care about. So Isabel, do you have a chart that we can use to do bookkeeping? I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you want to explain that better. Melissa, will you go over workflows and systems and processes when dealing with clients? Yeah, let me make a note on that. I will add that. Thank you. What and how are we going to do in bookkeeping? I don't understand that question. So any QuickBooks questions, specific QuickBooks questions, we're not going to get into actual how to do bookkeeping in QuickBooks questions. I will get into how important it is to know QuickBooks, and you don't have to know all of it at first, but QuickBooks is a big topic, and we could spend a whole, maybe I'll eventually do a series on that, but that's more of an instructional thing. It's not really how to start and grow your bookkeeping business. It's more of how to do bookkeeping itself. But I think to answer your question, can I take QuickBooks Pro Advisor exam even if I don't have a company? Yes, anybody can take it. Naz, can we go through the individual tasks we'd be responsible for as an outsourced bookkeeper? The individual tasks. Yeah, so we can talk about the levels. Yep, that's a good one. We will talk about the different levels. What this is just something we've created here at Bookkeeping Life, is just kind of different levels of bookkeeping and what each one entails. So absolutely. So Ed asks, QuickBooks offers their own bookkeeping service. It's relatively cheap. Would you consider this to be a threat both in how much one could charge and in taking away potential clients? Uh, I haven't seen it affecting anything I've been doing or people that I know. I think it's another one of those things where, yes, you can hire this big corporation to do uh, what's really a personal thing. And you're going to have a certain percentage of the population that is okay with that and prefers to pay whatever amount and save a little bit instead of finding somebody that they can really build a relationship with and trust on a different level. I would trust somebody that runs their own business more quicker than I would trust somebody working for a major corporation. So there's a big difference there because one's an employee of a business and one is having their own business. People that have their own business typically more um, vested in what they're doing. So I would trust a so I would trust a bookkeeping business over a major corporation getting into this. And I think I haven't obviously taken QuickBooks or Intuit's service for bookkeeping, but I have heard not so good things, and um, I personally wouldn't trust them because you want to build a relationship with your bookkeeper. You don't want to feel like it's a corporation or this big, major corporation. You want to feel like you can get a hold of them when you want that personal care and personal touch. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with your clients to provide that. QuickBooks Online for accountants is free. You're welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining us. So we've got a blueprint. If you have any other questions, just shoot them out there and I'll answer them. But we do have a blueprint going forward. That was the goal of today. Introduce myself but while you're here, you can definitely check out all the videos that are on the channel. Just click on Bookkeeping Life there on the screen and it'll take you to the channel and just check out all the videos and we'll talk about a lot of those topics, but we'll talk about them in different ways and we'll talk about other stuff for sure in depth. And I look forward to it. We'll try to do this every single day and I'll shoot out announcements as far as I will most likely change the times around so that to fit my life schedule. And so some days they're going to be early, some days they're going to be later. But if you miss them, they still be available to you. So you will always be able to, and I'll put them in a playlist as well. So I'll just watch your emails and watch the Facebook. If you're picking this up on Facebook, pick up just check out the posts I make on Facebook and and if you're on my email list, check out your email and I'll post up. I think what I'll do is each day post up what's coming the next day and then also post the link to what we did that day so that you'll always be able to see these videos. Okay, so if you miss them, don't worry, you can catch up. If you're busy for a couple days, you can always come back and binge watch. Okay, and then I'm always available via email to steve@bookkeepinglife.com. Just reach out to me, send me a question anytime. I'm happy to answer it the best I can. All right, so hope everybody enjoys their day. Hope everybody's doing great. And I will look for an email from you later today and about what we'll do tomorrow. And thanks for showing up. All right, take care.